like fix, improve on this calculator, because obviously this is just it's assuming that the user is gonna input exactly what you want. So for instance, if I run the program, interest calculator.py, how much is your loan? If I say nothing, like a text, it's gonna drop out because it's an error. So what we need to do is we're gonna change all the inputs to raw input. So that way, no matter what they put in, it accepts it. And everything will be put in a string. So we'll just make these all 0 because Python changes it anyways. So now if I save this and I run it, I'm gonna say nothing. It'll accept it, and then something. Gross. I ate a pickle and it was really gross, and I just burped it up. That was really nasty. How long? Too many. And so if you see like it's giving errors, like, oh, I can't multiply because it's not an int, like it's not a number, like what the fuck are you thinking? So you have to check Python so we're gonna have to make a method, and we're gonna have to pass in these variables in a try catch block. So we're gonna say define def is number, and you're gonna have to pass in a variable. We'll just call it x. Actually, no. We'll call it user input because that's what it is. Usually a good practice to name your variables something that makes sense. So let's see. So we'll do a try catch block. Let's see. Well, I guess it's just accept in Python. Accept value error. Return, and then we're gonna return like a boolean. So we're gonna say float. We'll say user input. We'll say return true. So yeah. So now this is just a function that we can use to check, to make sure that whatever the user entered is a number. So now we'll just comment these out. No, I won't comment them out. So amount financed. We're gonna have to check for each one, which is kind of a lot of code, but whatever. So we're gonna call define amount financed. We'll call it get. So now that we know it's a getter, we won't pass anything, and then semicolons, and then tab. So in Python, you need these 4 spaces so it knows that you're inside of a function or a loop. Yeah. So that's what we'll do. Yeah, so we're gonna have to return amount financed. Okay. So if, and then this is where this function comes in, this is number. So if amount financed is, oops, I did it backwards. So we're gonna call the function if is number of amount, we're gonna pass an amount financed, and this is just gonna check if that's true. We're gonna say return return amount financed, and then it should be good, and then it should drop out, but we're gonna check it. So if that's true, and then if not, we're gonna say print something isn't right. Try again. And then we're just gonna call the loop again. And then, yeah. So we're gonna say amount financed is equal to get amount financed. So this is kind of confusing, but you want to name your functions and set them to what you like program them before you run any of your actual code. So this is where our main code starts. So that way when we do call it, it knows what it is. So this is what this is going to do. Once it starts, it's going to see this variable called amount financed, and it's going to say that is equal to get amount financed, and it's going to drop into here, into get amount financed, and then it's going to ask the input, how much is your loan? And then you enter whatever you want to enter, and then it's going to check if is number is true, and it's going to go into this function because we passed it amount financed, and it's going to check if we can make it a float, then we're going to return true. But if there's a value error, like if there's any type of error, say it's a string, it's going to return false, and it's going to drop out, and it's going to go print something isn't right, and then it's going to call this function again to try again. So the only way you can get out of it is if you enter a number. So let's try it. Invalids index, amount financed. If is number, oh, I need one more parentheses. How much is your loan? And we're gonna say, I don't know. Oops, false not defined. Has to be a capital F apparently. How much is your loan? I don't know. Something isn't right. Try again. I don't know, $10. Okay, what's your interest rate? 5. Okay. Can't multiply sequence. Okay, so this is good actually. So even though we checked if it could be a float, we didn't set it equal to, we have to do something called a cast. We have to convert it to the type that we want. So right after this, I wonder if you could do it. So no, I'm not gonna try it. So we're just gonna set amount financed is equal to float. That converts it to a float, amount financed. We'll say 10, 5, 5. Can't multiply. So interest rate. Oh, so we have to do it for all of them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make them all right now. This is kind of what coding is. Kind of just fuck around with it until you get it right. Until you get good enough to like understand everything perfectly, which not everyone does. So we're just gonna call it get interest rate. Is number interest rate, return interest rate, get interest rate. I like camel casing, so that's what I'm gonna do. So interest rate is now equal to get interest rate. And then same thing as right here. Interest rate is equal to get, or no, is equal to float interest rate. And then this one right here, years financed. We don't need, I think we can just int cast that. So we're gonna say years financed is equal to that, get years financed, years financed, years financed, get years financed. So we're just setting up our functions. Get interest rate. And then same thing. Oops, not interest rate. We're gonna get years financed. There we go. And then years financed. And since we don't need the decimal place on financed, we're just gonna say is equal to int years financed. Right? Yep. Okay. So now we actually don't need this on interest rate because it is a float already. So we can take that out and everything else should be fine. Interest rate, it's $1,000. It's 5% at 5 years. 1,250. Alright, so it works. So now let's try to break it. How much is your loan? I don't know. Something's not right. Try again. $1,000. Float. Amount financed. Argument must be a string or a number. Something isn't right. How much is your loan? Argument must be a string or a number. Okay. His number, amount financed, amount financed. Okay, so it didn't like something. Line 45. 45. Amount financed. Amount financed. String or a number. That's weird. I'm gonna print it before the error to see what the number is. Weird. Okay, so if I do text first to error,